from Hollywood, California, it's the Nighttime Show. I'm the voice of the show, Mike Black. With us, as always, our head writer, Matt Walker. Today, our very special guest from Race to the Scene, FAN-O-RAMA, and you can see him right now on Prop Culture on Disney+, Dan Lanigan. And now, our host, found in the musty locker in the basketball court under the Matterhorn, Stephen Kramer Glickman!
That was so great. Great job, Mike Black.
Thanks.
Dan Lanigan, this is a true honor and pleasure, sir.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you fibbing on my behalf.
You know what's I'm a big fan of like movie props and of like all the I'm constantly watching like the behind the scenes of all my favorite things.
As am I.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
That's how I got involved in this stuff.
Well, when your show came out, I was like, who is this guy that gets to host this incredible show? Prop Culture, which is on Disney Plus right now, is just...
And it's a great show.
God, it's so good. It's so good. It plays into, like, everybody's, like, that thing where you're just like, I wish I knew more about, a film, and then to have all the access, to be able to, like, really get in there and find everything. How did this come about? How did you end up doing this show?
It's years of being a uber obsessive prop collector, and at the same time, trying to make my way through the entertainment industry as a producer and director. And one thing led to another, and I wound up becoming, the host on the show. It's something I wanted to do for a while. I wanted to put together a show that actually celebrated the people behind the scenes and the artwork that they created, these artifacts, these things that are left over. And that's how that all developed into Disney's Prop Culture.
Well, you can really feel it in the Mary Poppins episode. You sit down with the woman, one of the people who created the broomsticks for not the broomsticks, the
chimney sweeps.
The chimney sweeps, and
and
pulling that out. Oh my God! And like her reaction to it and everything, like it's very visceral, and you can feel like how much some of this stuff, how much it means to all these people.
Well, and also how much care went into the films, and how much, like, you look at like the drawings that had like the little fabric swatches for each color that was going to be used on each costume. It was amazing how much craftsmanship went into all the work of the production on every single level.
There's so much artwork that goes into making any movie behind the scenes to get to what you see on screen, and a lot of that stuff is prototypes to stuff that you even see, or different directions. So there's so much different artwork, whether it be drawings, paintings, castings, or sculpture, all these different things. And that artwork is amazing.
And you're looking at it from a time period where people didn't see it as collectible. They saw it as we'll shoot it once and get rid of it.
Tools of the trade. Yeah. That's what they were, and people that kept them were just lucky to do it as keepsakes. But ultimately, that's what's important, is this connection they have to these films that we as audience members have to those films, and that's what connects it all together, and why these artifacts are still important. Yeah. It's because the movies mean something to us.
Absolutely. Dan, let's go back a little bit. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Chicago suburbs.
What was your when you were growing up? Like, what kind of movies were you watching? What were you into?
There was this little film that I caught when I was very young called Star Wars that really kind of
I've heard of that.
Know about it, but Star Wars was massive. I went to see that in the theater with my dad. Before that, watching, I wouldn't call them reruns, but certainly when Wizard of Oz was on TV, I was obsessed with that.
Yeah.
Raiders of the Lost Ark when it came out. Those are the kind of films that kind of made me really see, the magic of movie making. And, I wanted to learn more about it. And, through magazine articles and behind the scenes documentaries and little, TV series, the Leonard Nimoy show about behind the scenes, all that kind of stuff really got me obsessed with the making of this stuff. Yeah. And it just kind of grew from there.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely.
What was the first thing that you recall seeing on TV that you thought, I would like to have that? Or I would like to explore that thing or something, Honestly,
the thing about it is that looking at it from a collecting point of view, it wasn't something that jumped in my head. I became obsessed with the iconography and the making of. It wasn't until, honestly, I probably came across some of this stuff in person at the MGM Disney Park in Florida before it became Hollywood Park.
Oh, okay.
And they would have these displays of screen use props, and I would see this stuff, and it's one thing to see it on TV or see it in the movies being used in the project, right, or even a behind the scenes.
Yeah. But
when you see it in person and you can experience it, in stereo vision, and you can smell it, and you can kind of get a sense of its presence, these pieces of artwork, then it was like, oh wow, this stuff still exists. And then from there on, just happenstance. I wouldn't say that, I would see a movie and say, oh, I want to get that someday, and eventually it happened. Now that happens now because,
of course,
I'm a collector, but back then that wasn't the case.
Well, I remember, I don't know, maybe you'll remember this event, but when I was in high school, this was long after the Star Wars movies had come out, Smithsonian did an exhibit of basically everything Lucasfilm had at the Smithsonian. Yep. And I didn't get to go to it, but I was there like a week after it left. And all they had left was C-3PO and R2-D2, like a full-size mock-up of them, and the Holy Grail from Indiana Jones. And I remember seeing those things and just being blown away by them, and I was like, man, I wish I'd caught that exhibit.
Well, the fact that the Smithsonian saw early on that these pop culture artifacts from these films are important. Yeah. It just shows you the strength of what our society, part of our society is built on, this imagination of these wonderful works of art that happen to be filmed,
Absolutely.
It's super important.
Much like in the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark, a lot of these props sort of got buried in the back of a warehouse somewhere, and they're like hidden away right now. So what do you think is out there? Like, what's your holy grail that's out there? Like, what's the ark that you might be looking for one of these days that you could find in a warehouse?
That's a good question.
I get asked this from time to time, and for me, there are pieces that I would love to have in my collection that I know are out there that are in professional collections that, as much as I would love to acquire it if it ever came available, I'm glad it's where it is. Like the AT-AT stop motion miniatures from Empire Strikes Back.
Sure.
Yeah.
I always love those things. Those are a spectacular feat of engineering and film and just design and, everything. What I'm hoping to find someday is somebody opens a box and they can come across a trench coat that Harrison Ford wore in the Blade Runner. I am obsessed with that film, and I would love to get one of those trench coats. I know they had multiple ones that they used, but for all accounts, most of them have disappeared except for one that's in a private collection.
Yeah, if you're a fan of that movie, it's a very unique style of trench coat.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That collar is so cool looking.
It's not the Peter Falk trench coat.
No, it is not.
No, although, come on. That's awesome, too.
Yes. I'll take a Columbo one.
Would the Columbo be your number 2 trench coat of all time?
I wouldn't say number 2, but I wouldn't turn it down.
How did you end up getting involved with Disney? Like, how did you guys meet?
I've been working with different production companies for years, and through that work, you meet people that are looking to buy shows for different networks. And my partner, Jason Henry, who I've worked with on a number of shows in the past, was pitching something to Disney and something different than our show. And based on a conversation, it's like, well, we also have this other show. I didn't think it'd be right for you guys, but what do you think? And they loved it. So we went and further developed it and made it, a little bit more Disney friendly than what it was originally planning to be. It was more a broader idea for a show with, movies from all, across the board. Obviously, we focused the show with Disney movies for Disney Plus, but it gave us great access, and they loved it. It was a lot of fun to do. It was a lot of fun, a lot of work.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. How long did it take you guys to shoot that season?
We, because of scheduling issues and trying to find the right combination of, and research, really. There was a lot of research up front, but trying to find the right pieces that match with the right people and the right time. It took us a good 8 months to film the entire series, and then another couple of months to finish editing. We were editing through the process, but we were figuring out what the show was at the time. So there was, we had more than we needed, and hopefully, we'll get a chance to do extended versions of the episodes or additional segments that we did. But
I was surprised at how in depth it went. When you reunited the little girl from Mary Poppins with her wardrobe.
Yes.
That was amazing to me that you were able to track all of that stuff down.
Yeah, or Julie Andrews' ex-husband with her costume, with the costume that he designed for her. I mean, that was the kind of stuff where you're like, oh man, there's a lot of layers to this. There's a lot of something I love about the show is I'm a big Antiques Roadshow fan,
right?
And I was a big fan of Toy Hunter, of that show back in back in the day with Jordan, but I loved those shows because they have heart and they're not no one's getting screwed over on the show. No one's like, I'll give you $50, and they're like,
it's no Pawn Stars.
It's not Pawn Stars.
No.
We
didn't want to do we didn't want to do a transactional show,
right?
Having to do with the financial aspects of it, because the reality of it is, well, it's not why I collect, and it's not why most people that collect this stuff collect. They collect because they love these films,
right?
And it's the hunt. It's the Indiana Jones and trying to track down the stuff that means something to you. So
it belongs in a museum.
Yeah. Well, I wanted the show to be about that emotional attachment that you have, and that the people that work on these movies have with these objects, because they represent these amazing, parts of their life that they worked on these awesome films.
Yeah. I mean, Steven basically loaded up a truck full of props from his TV show when it was done.
1,000% true. Yeah.
You've got 12 gold records hanging on your wall?
Yeah, I do. And when I used to be on the show called Big Time Rush, and when the show ended its third and final season, they were like, the show's over. I backed a truck onto the Paramount stage and literally loaded up a pickup truck with the entire set, props, everything I could fit into the truck. And
you're a smart man.
Yeah, and because Nickelodeon was like, we don't care, this show's not coming back. 2 weeks later, they called and they were like, show's been picked up for a fourth season, coming back. Bring all those things back. And I was like, those things don't exist anymore. I don't know what you're talking about.
What are you talking about?
And I kept all of them. I kept every last prop and piece, and they were all still in my home, and I love them. One of the coolest things that we've ever had happen on our show is we interviewed Walter Koenig from Star Trek, and while we were finishing, he has
at his house,
and his entire home is covered in toys and figurines and memorabilia and all sorts of stuff,
and not just Star Trek stuff like you might think, but like going back to old Dick Tracy pulp novels. And stuff.
And under
that's awesome.
He had an arcade game and a pinball machine, and under the pinball machine was a sculpture of Flat Top from Dick Tracy. And I went, "Oh my God, that's Flat Top from Dick Tracy." And he was like, "Yeah, get it out of my house. Get it out. It's my wife hates it." And I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Well, what is it exactly?" He goes, "It was a gift from John, who won the Oscar, John Caglione Jr., who won the Oscar for Best Makeup. It's the maquette, the actual clay maquette, and he gave it to me, and it is in my living room on a pedestal, and like I freaking love it. It's like one of my favorite things in the whole world. But like things like that, like that's the best part about this weird business is like sometimes you're out, sometimes you just run into a piece of history, and if you can spot it, and you know, I'm sure you've had moments where you know, you were looking for one thing and then saw something else, and you're like, "Oh my God!" Have you ever had
It happens all the time.
What?
These aren't flashlights; these are lightsaber handles.
That's right. Oh my God!
What's a surprise? What was a surprise moment where you discovered something and you were like, "Oh my God! I can't believe this is what it is."
Let me think here. I think I came across. I'm a big. I was and still am a big Babylon 5 fan, which was, you know, this show that TNT did, and then it was on syndication back in the day.
With Walter
Bruce Boxleitner, who was in Tron, was on that show. So I've been collecting stuff from that, and I came across a really cool pistol that somebody had. They had no idea. I wasn't going there. I was looking. I think I was looking at some alien stuff, and I came across it. Nobody knew what it was, and I'm like, "Oh, I'll take it," you know. And you know, it's those kind of little moments that, you know, your knowledge base kind of, you know, helps you identify pieces. And I still have that piece to this day.
Yeah, I love when stuff like that happens.
That's so cool. That's the greatest. That's the greatest moment.
I picture here in Los Angeles, there are probably some storage lockers somewhere just filled with all kinds of stuff like this that are just like...
I imagine that most storage locker locations, because the amount of people that work in LA in the industry, there's got to be something in there of worth.
Yeah, so like this has to be the epicenter of props, obviously, because of just what happens here in Los Angeles. But
and the history. You know,
what have you found in other places that are unusual? Like, let's say you were in like New Orleans or something, and you discovered something in like a small shop. Like, did anything like that happen to you, where you've just found stuff in random places where you wouldn't expect to see it?
You know, no, I've never found anything in stores that they per se didn't know what they had or what was connected to it. I certainly have found things in people that have worked in production or have family members in production. But I've already, you know, you're already going there with kind of that purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
Finding it at a junk store. I mean, in Hollywood it may happen, but outside of Hollywood, I haven't personally come across it. I think that's something that happens a lot in England, because there was a lot of movies that are shot in London in that extended area. So that happens. But and I would imagine now going forward, like Vancouver and possibly even in Atlanta, these cities that are starting to not only have production, but going on for many years, that's where you might be able to find that kind of stuff. But I haven't.
It really does. It bums me out when I had heard this, and I'm not sure if this is true or not, but I had heard that like when the Harry Potter films finished, that they literally burned like all the costumes and props from the show, or as many as they possibly could. Like very few things made it out of like of those films.
There is some truth to that. From what I understand, because it was such a big production and they were planning on doing so many movies, you know, they had this big cottage industry of people working to make Harry Potter props for years because of the 7 or 8 movies. And you know, you want to have everything that possibly have ready for your actors and your directors, and so that when you're shooting, you're not waiting for stuff. So they have multiple versions of props, and they have multiples of those versions, and then they have multiple versions of costumes at different stages of wear and stuff. So, you know, they kept a cherry pick of a bunch of stuff for the archives and for the museum that they have, but they destroyed a lot of the stuff because they didn't want it getting into the public, because it kind of makes the stuff they had less special.
People learn how to reverse engineer it and make it themselves.
And then they're making fakes and stuff like that, right?
It's the same end result, but a different reason than the famous Stanley Kubrick 2001, where he destroyed all the sets and all the props from that movie because he didn't want a sequel to ever be made, and then they made one anyways. But
he didn't want a sequel to be made, and he also just didn't want his stuff to be used in other science fiction films.
Mm-hmm.
And repurposed. He wanted his iconography to stay with him, but he also didn't want a sequel as well. So, but he got screwed on that.
Well, I remember going to a friend of mine took me on a tour of Lightstorm Studios. And we were looking at some stuff there, and I saw one thing, and I was like, is that what I think it is? And he was like, yeah, we were destroying some furniture, and we got to these cabinets, and we were about to throw them in the fire, and someone said, maybe we should check the drawers before we do that. And they opened the top drawer, and it was the heart of the ocean.
Oh, my God.
That they almost destroyed.
Wow, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, that kind of stuff, when you make a film as a production company, you're looking at it from a business perspective. And yes, the director and Jim Cameron, I believe he's a collector, but it's one thing when you make the film yourself. You don't treat the stuff as reverential as somebody who's coming in from a fan or from an outside perspective.
Right.
So sometimes that stuff kind of gets, okay, we're going to keep it. We'll put it in a drawer, and then they forget where it is, and the next thing you know, the furniture's thrown out. But luckily, that kind of stuff gets hopefully saved whenever possible.
Yeah,
absolutely. Hey, before we continue doing the show, we got to talk about the equipment that we're using to make the show. Make an epic show that is. It sounds like everyone is right here, like we're all sitting together, but we're not.
We've got a fantastic multi-track recorder from Zoom. If you need multi-track recordings, that's the only company you should even be looking at. Basically, we had issues when we had to switch to doing things during a pandemic, and we went from doing a show with people in person to people over the phone, and Zoom just made it a piece of cake.
Yeah, you bet. ZoomCorp.com is the website, and this has made it so that we could interview people in Nigeria,
New Zealand,
Guatemala, Austria, the Czech Republic. When we were
Are
doing
you just
all
naming
those,
countries now?
Yeah, well, no. When we were doing all the interviews with the cast of 90 Day Fiancé, we were talking to people, in the Ukraine. We were doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And then just the other day when we had John Rhys Davies on the show
from New Zealand,
he was in New Zealand the whole time.
Sounded
it sounds
like
he was sitting in the room with us. Yeah.
It truly is the mark of excellence for podcasting. Zoom LiveTrack L8 8-track mixer recorder, the board for creators, podcasting, music, and beyond.
Yeah, it is a badass system, and we're very lucky to be working with Zoom. Go check out ZoomCorp.com. That's ZoomCorp.com. Zoom, you have to say it 3 times. That's what people do in ads, right? Zoom,
what is it, Stephen?
ZoomCorp.com. It's ZoomCorp.com. We're talking about ZoomCorp.com. All right, let's get back to the show. All right, so what I'd like to do with you, Dan, we have a couple things we'd like to get done with you here today, because we heard from different fans about their favorite live-action Disney films, and so I want to throw some of those out to you. For a season 2, if there's going to be. Do you know already if there's going to be a season 2? Because they'd be crazy not to do a season 2.
We're still working on trying to come up with something that will work for Disney. They've got a lot on their plate right now. A lot of films that aren't going into theaters, and Disney Plus is doing really well. So we're
in a weird
time over Disney Plus.
Time paradox. You could be doing like the props from Black Widow before it's released.
Exactly. Yeah. And it'll still be 5 years before the movie comes out.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. All right, so
let's hear your list.
All right, here's a couple. We got a couple suggestions. Here we go. Mary Poppins, you've already done. The computer that wore tennis shoes. The computer who wore tennis shoes is the film. Do you think there's any? Is there anything?
I have briefly considered that one. I don't know. I guess the main costume.
The tennis shoes, I would assume.
Yeah, I think the tennis shoes.
Yeah, the tennis shoes, right? Yeah.
Or Kurt Russell.
The tennis shoes.
Just kidnap him from his home.
Well, yeah. I mean, he'd be worth doing the whole episode just to sit down with him.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that one a lot. Swiss Family Robinson.
Yeah, I'm not sure if anything exists from that. I mean, part of the, that whole film is so exciting because of the Great Treehouse.
Yeah.
Sections of that treehouse, but other than stuff that's in the park, which I don't think ever got used in the movie, or maybe some wardrobe survived. That's a tough one. The problem is these older films are really tough to find stuff from and to verify that it's real.
Absolutely.
So like Treasure Island would be very difficult.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. But I mean, that's a huge film.
Yeah, absolutely. Muppet Treasure Island. Now that would be worth searching out.
That's definitely one that there are a number of props out there from that film, and the problem is that there's Muppets around, but Muppets are not something that Disney looks at Muppets as characters. They're not props.
Right.
So we had that issue with the Muppet movie episode, but we were able to cross the line because we were able to interview Gonzo about the props he wore, the costume pieces he wore.
Man, that was the best.
That
was so great. Me and Mike Black here worked for Brian Henson for about 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah.
We had an office over at the Henson Studios where you taped the interview with Brian. And
that's awesome.
It was so cool, and we got to our first meeting, which I just have to say this out loud. Our first meeting, it was. Do you remember John Schnepp? Did you ever meet him?
I don't.
It was John Schnepp and Mike Black and I, and we got to go to the Creature Shop. And we had this giant meeting with all these, characters and creatures all around us, and it was like a very nerve-wracking meeting because we're pitching science fiction.
Right.
And at the end of the meeting, we say our goodbyes, look forward to working together, and we walk out. And Mike Black I go, man, that was exciting. That was so exciting. And man, there's so much to see, and there's so much creativity in there. And Mike was like, yeah, do you think he felt the same way? Because man, we better start working. We got a lot of work to do if we're going to impress Brian Henson with our creativity. We better work our ass off.
I think the most tempted I've ever been in my life, and I don't even know if Steven knows about this. They set us up in an office to work, and in the office was just a pile of scripts. And you know how scripts have titles written along the side of them too, so you can see. About halfway down was one that said The Dark Crystal 2. And I was like, they're filming us. They're filming us to see if we're going to do it. So I'm not even telling Steven because he'll do it.
Yeah, I'll steal that script. I don't
like,
care. All right, here's another one. This is one I actually think is a real contender for an episode of your show because it is beloved, The Rocketeer.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that is one that I would really like to do. It's got the Joe Johnston connection.
Yeah.
It's a comic book character, but yet it is so real. I actually have a full costume and jetpack and the entire works.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I've been a big fan of that movie for a long time. But I would love to dive into the rest of that stuff. That would be very high on my list to do one on The Rocketeer.
I think so. I think that's a big one. Our friend Shannon suggested the original Pete's Dragon, which, my God, that movie. Yeah. I mean, I don't know who's left from that movie, but what a piece of history.
From the people that worked on it, but that was a film that was very important to me when I was growing up. Certainly, we could find some of the cells. I think the model miniature of the lighthouse is still around. I'm not sure about any wardrobe, but I mean that's the precursor to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, mixing animation with live action.
Yeah, by the way, your Who Framed Roger Rabbit is the episode that I have now shown to everybody in my family. Anyone that will watch it, I will show it to.
Really?
Well, it's the one I loved. I loved that movie, and all three of us are stand-up comics, and we're all friends with Charles Fleischer. So we've been, like kind of ingrained with it, and me and Mike got to work with Christopher Lloyd last year at the what's it called, at the Animation Awards, and so like we've gotten some cool interactions with that film. But what never occurred to me, never in a million years, is that car that he was driving around, the animated car, was an actual miniature car that was being driven by someone else behind him. That's the stuff where and then they had to animate
Charlie Crowell drove that car.
God, that is the coolest. I loved every single moment of that thing.
And do you have Bob Hoskins' trench coat?
Oh, yes. Now there we go.
There we go. I have Bob Hoskins' suit, jacket, suit pants. One of the ones that he actually wore in the Benny the Cat sequence, because the back of the jacket was cut open so that the straps could go on and hold him into the seat. I've got his tie, but I don't have his hat. And I don't have his trench coat, and I'm still looking for those.
And those are in your personal collection?
For my personal collection, yes.
Oh, Dan, like have you considered doing like a museum run where you put all of your stuff in a
just inviting strangers to your house?
Can I come to your house? I'm just kidding.
No, I have been actively working on trying to figure out the business of museums, which is a very tough business to run, and I'm not looking to make money on it. I just don't want to. I want to be able to put my pieces out and travel them so that they're taken care of. People can see it, and they don't get damaged. I don't have to keep throwing money at it because it's an expensive process.
Oh yeah,
but
of course.
Eventually it's going to happen. I'm going to do it at some point, and I want people to see this stuff because it affects me so strongly. I think it's great to get the fans of this stuff to see this stuff in person.
Oh yeah,
so cool.
And by the way, Charlie Fleischer, Charles. I've gotten to know him since the show, and amazing guy. I mean, brilliant.
Yes.
So at such a high level, amazing artist. I mean, the guy is in the Moleeds. Wow.
Yes.
Moleeds.
That's all he talks about.
Yes.
Is Moleeds.
We talk about Moleeds a lot, but I will tell you, the guy is he's a genius. He's a genius.
I love it. I watch a lot of old TV shows, and like I keep seeing him. Like I saw him the other day on an episode of The White Shadow. It's like he just pops up, or you're like, there's Charles.
I didn't know he was in that.
It's like you watch old shows like that, and he's just like one of the high school kids or whatever from the late '70s, and it's funny to see that.
Yeah, he's. I believe from what I have heard that he had a bit of a cool deal with Disney that he would get paid to not do the voice, and that was like a big thing for him. So then when he does stand-up and he does other things, that there was like a deal in place. I don't know what it was.
Did you get that deal for Pigeon Toady for Storks?
I did not get that deal. Warner Brothers did not give me that deal. But that was, I know this is like a side note thing. I did this movie called Storks, and in the movie I played this pigeon, and at the premiere they had this big walk-around costume of my character, and I asked if I could keep it after the movie, and Warner Brothers was like, "What the fuck are you talking about? You don't get to keep." This was like a $10,000, like $10,000.
That's exactly how they said it too.
They're like, "What are you talking about? We're not giving this to you."
Do with it?
Yeah, and I was like, "I want to put it in my living room. Like, I want to show, put it on a mannequin and show it to people." And they were like,
and it's made for somebody who's like 4'10".
Yeah, I was like, "I'm not gonna wear it." And like, where's it gonna go? They're like, "It's going into storage at Warner Brothers." Like, what do you? No, that's not how this works. We're a movie studio. And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
And then on Christmas, they called and said, go downstairs, and there was a moving truck, and they brought it to me as a gift.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I love it so much. It's my favorite thing in the entire. It's enormous. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because I was like, what else is in their storage? Like, what else is underground in this giant thing that they have? What is this? How does that work?
Well, I mean, they have archivists, and they choose what they decide for long-term, for the company's history. And then they have other divisions that store things in case they need to use it for marketing or potentially, for other projects. There's lots of reasons, and they spend a lot of money on it. And they can't, it's hard for them to turn around and sell this stuff to like to the audience because they've already written the stuff down to zero.
Yeah.
So if they sell it, now they got to pay taxes on the stuff, and it could affect the valuation of what the stuff is that they already have in their inventory. So it's all really messed up. The business of it. I mean, I understand it and I appreciate it, but it's tough. It's tough. That's why they, it's hard for them to get rid of stuff.
So how dangerous is it for us as a society to have all these things in only a few places? Because like Universal had a huge fire that destroyed a large part of their music collection. They lost masters and all kinds of old recordings that are just gone forever. Oh, yeah. Like, how much danger is there of like some warehouse fire going up and it just destroying thousands of these items?
Well, I mean, of course there's danger to it, unless you have backups of it. Nowadays, it makes it a lot easier to make backups, but artifacts, putting them in one location, there's the economy of scale. Mm-hmm. Which allows it easier for you to take care of it and take care of it in the right way. But then you have to be careful that, you control the environment as much as you can. But you can't control an earthquake. You can't control a tornado. You can't control a fire. I mean, to a certain degree, a local fire. There's just chances. It's just like living, It's like, you could go out and have fun with your life, or you could live in a bubble. There's balance. So,
what I'm trying to say is that the BBC should send me their TARDIS for safekeeping.
Yes.
So it's not all in Wales.
Which one?
Any of them. I'll take the Fourth Doctor is my favorite, but any of them.
Right?
Yeah.
Have you ever run into any Doctor Who stuff out there, or Star Trek or Star Trek?
Oh yeah, a lot of Star Trek stuff. Yeah. Doctor Who stuff is not as commonplace on this side of the pond, but I've seen some original Daleks, some Cybermen, a bunch of different aliens from the more recent series that have been kind of rehashes of other stuff. I dig it. I'm still looking for I'd like to eventually get a nice a sonic screwdriver from any one of the series. Honestly,
how about
something that's originally?
How about a 26-foot long knitted scarf?
Ooh.
Oh wow,
that would be cool.
Pretty great.
Yeah.
Now, there's a whole
wait,
industry built around replicas of props.
Yes.
So what replicas out there do you think really get it right? Like, I have a replica that's fantastic where I have a Star Trek communicator that's a Bluetooth speakerphone that pairs with my phone, and like it was made from a 3D scan of
Jesus, Dan,
of one of the props that Shatner had. So like,
Dan,
what replicas are out there that people should look out for that are worth buying?
Well, first of all, they sold you a bunch of crap. I'll tell you right now. Why? There was no such thing as Bluetooth back then.
Yes, well, that is true.
If it was exactly like the one that Shatner had, it would not work. But that being aside,
yes.
No, there's some great replicas. I mean, there's great companies that do replica work, and it's a case by case basis. I used to collect replicas back in the day. I don't so much anymore, just because I don't have room for it. I think it's actually amazing works of art. Unless there's like a piece, like I've got a couple of the old master replica AT-ATs, which are the 1-to-1 replica scale, because I knew I would never get an original one, and I wanted to represent it. But a lot of the best replicas are the ones that are made by the collectors themselves that really obsess about the accuracy, and they're completing it exactly alike, and they'll spend a year or two to make a piece.
Yeah, like
those are some of the best stuff out there.
We know a guy who turned his entire living room into the bridge of the Enterprise.
Oh yeah.
and it was crazy. Like he spent like 10
Wait,
years making it.
Enterprise from the original series?
Yes, NCC 1701, the original.
Nice.
As Scotty would say, no bloody A, B, C,
God.
or
No
D.
bloody
Dan, once this was a mistake. Getting him once we talk about Star Trek with Matt, it's a real problem.
It's over.
So we gotta.
Hold on. I gotta bring up one question.
Yes,
I'm a Trekkie.
Yeah.
I've always been a guy who could balance my love for Star Wars with my love for Star Trek. I wasn't one or the other.
Yeah.
I love Star Trek, but I am obsessed with Deep Space Nine.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone here like that show?
I was watching it last night. There's a channel that I get called Heroes and Icons. They show a 5-hour block where it's every series in a row, and I often sit there and watch 5 hours of Star Trek. And Deep Space Nine was a good episode last night. It's the one where Cisco was injured.
Oh my God.
It was a whole thing with him and Kira became friends, sort of, in the episode. It's a good
All
one.
right, okay, yeah.
Dan,
I
I
think that show is brilliant.
Let me tell
we'll
you,
get off
Dan,
the Star
something that we did for Matt Walker, because this is why podcasts can be fun. Is sometimes we have people on where like one of us are like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with this person's work. I have to talk to them. So Matt, of course, being a big Star Trek fan, is of course a fan of Next Generation.
Yeah.
So we got Michael Dorn to come on the show, and we had him in
What
person. We had Michael Dorn at the Hollywood Improv in front of 200 people come up on stage. We did an interview with him. We played games with him.
We played a clip of him on Webster.
Yeah, we played a clip of him on Webster.
Nice.
We played a lot. We did a lot of fun stuff with him. But the thing that was the greatest is we made a trophy out of a giant soccer trophy that was like a 6 foot tall gold, one of those like like you'd get if you were a kid.
Yeah.
And we replaced all the
Senior
soccer.
high, tall one, right?
Yeah.
We took all the soccer people off of it and replaced them with little golden wharfs that we spray painted that we just bought on Amazon. And we awarded him Best Podcast Guest in the history of the universe. And it was professionally photographed. And then theblast.com put out a very serious article saying that Michael Dorn had been awarded Best Podcast Guest in history.
Nice.
And he took the award.
Yeah, we thought he was going to throw it in the trash because it was
He
enormous.
was going to keep it because it was just silly. It was like silly.
Yeah, we were worried about striking it afterward. We were
like
well,
how are we going to do with
we'll
this
destroy
thing?
this thing.
Yeah, we'll
later.
throw it in the trash.
And we couldn't find it.
It turned out he took it home and displays it in his home now, which is hilarious.
Well, that's great. Well, when will that be sent to me? Because I got that now, right?
Yes.
We will send you beat him, so we will send you one. Absolutely.
It is a yearly thing.
Yeah, it is. It's true.
It's the annual award, yes.
Yes. Hey, Matt, before we continue doing the show, we got to talk about what we're talking into.
These Sennheiser microphones are fantastic.
Yeah, they are literally top of the line. The best company in the world when it comes to microphones, headphones, audio equipment like this. I mean, it's just so damn good.
If you want to sound good talking into something, get yourself some Sennheiser microphones.
Yeah, it makes you sound epic. Mike Black, say something epic.
Space, the final frontier.
Bum, bum, bum,
These are the voyages.
bum,
If I say any more, lawyers will get involved. We have to.
Exactly.
But I said it clearly, and you can
did.
hear it clearly.
God, I can hear it. It sounds perfect. Hey, go check out Sennheiser. If you are looking for audio equipment, you're looking for a great microphone, this is the one to use. Mike, Matt, what's this one called that we're using?
This is the MD42.
Oh, it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's absolutely perfect.
Find them at Sennheiser.com.
You bet. All right, let's get back to the show. I have a question for you about a Disney film that I personally am obsessed with, and have tried to find any making of anything I possibly can, behind the scenes photos. I'm like such a major nerd about it. Return to Oz.
Turn to Oz.
A gigantic mess at Disney that I loved growing up and have seen like a million times. Have you ever run into anything? Do we know where TikTok is? Do we know where any of the puppets or creatures?
It's in China, TikTok.
Okay, all right. Serious, Dan. What do we know about this movie?
I know of at least 2 TikToks. One's in the Disney archives, and one is owned by a friend of mine.
Really?
The Tin Woodsman puppet is in the Disney archives.
Wow.
Let's see what else. One of the keys to Oz sold in a prop store auction about 2.5 years ago, and I believe, the underbidder on that. I would have loved to have gotten
What did
that.
it go for? Do you know?
It was pretty expensive. It was like 15 or 20 grand. It was a lot of money.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. I made 15 grand. The stop motion version of Jack, when he is getting when the Gnome King or the Rock King, I forget what's the character.
Yeah, the Gnome King. Yeah, Gnome King. Yeah.
The Gnome King is trying to mess with him towards the end of the film. That armature is out there. There are things from the film out there. I would love to explore that film. I think it's a lot of fun, and it's got the Henson connection, which is, anything Henson is my Farscape. Holy cow!
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about that movie is the director of Return to Oz was who was it? Return to Oz. Sorry, I don't know that. Yeah, no, I'll tell you, it's neat. Walter Murch, who is a phenomenal talent, but Walter Murch was working on the in the production, and then Disney started seeing the dailies from it, and they hated it, and they were like, "We need to shut this film down. It's going to be a loss. We need to shut it down immediately." And when they tried to shut it down, they were at L Street Studios shooting it, I believe, and Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola and I believe George Lucas were also on the lot at the same time shooting other movies, and they're friends with Walter, so they came and sat on the stage in chairs with Walter until Disney agreed to let the film continue.
I did not know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, there was like a show of solidarity between all the directors on the lot where they were like, no, this is bullshit.
Awesome.
That's some star power.
And then Disney was like, fine, we'll finish the end of the freaking movie, and then finished it, and then just kind of dumped it in theaters and was like, yeah, no, we're just let's bury this thing. Which is fine, but it is a fascinating story, and Fairuza Balk is such an interesting cast for for that, and everybody in that film. There's lots of neat people in there, so that would be a good episode. I would watch.
Yeah,
so I have a question about, you mentioned that there are 2 TikToks you know of. How big are they?
That's a good question. I don't know the exact specifications, but I would say, based on my memory, his belly is probably 3.25 feet in diameter. Mm-hmm. Maybe 3 feet in diameter.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit bigger.
Yeah. So that's a large piece.
Yeah. It's a big piece. It's a big piece.
Wow. That is so cool. I thoroughly, and I feel like we could talk to you for days. I mean, you've got, so much cool stuff. And the show is just so incredible, and people need to watch it. It's just a phenomenal show. Before we let you go, is there maybe top 3 pieces in your personal collection that you have that you could tell us about?
I suppose I could. So I would say my top piece is probably I've got Harrison Ford's Rick Deckard hero gun from Blade Runner.
Wow.
The live fire that was used as the hero gun from most scenes. They used a couple different rubber stunts for a few things, but it's believed that only one hero live fire was used, and from all the photos on set when he's holding it, it seems to match up with my gun. So I'm pretty obsessed about that, because it's the detective's pistol. It's the sci-fi noir film of all time.
And it's kind of sci-fi looking too. It has like
it is.
Isn't the brown isn't wood? It's like a translucent brown.
It's basically, the idea is it feels like an old school gun, yet it's got 2 barrels.
Yeah.
And it's got the box underneath where the bullets would be, that has a few little lights on it, and it's got the amber translucent grips. which always made it. I mean, you don't see it that much in the film because he's holding
Right.
it, but it just makes it such a gun that feels so unique.
Oh, that's very cool.
I would say that is one of my top pieces. I've got an Indiana Jones costume, complete costume, almost complete costume from Temple of Doom. Temple of Doom is my guilty favorite indie film.
That's so great. Wow.
And I've got a whip with that, and from that film, I'm just missing the satchel that he carries, the ammo bag, and his gun belt. But I've got everything else, shoes to the top, and then my Jack Skellington puppet from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, that's cool.
Those are the kind of three things. Yeah.
Yeah.
What facial expression does that one have?
Right now, I actually got a set of 12 that was the prototype, because there was this thing that Disney did back in the mid to late 90s called the 12 Faces of Jack, which were castings off of the original Jack Skellington heads.
Oh, okay.
That was like, they did 250 copies of it. It was the Disney store. I have the prototype for that, which was, they were 12 screen-used Jack heads that they cast from. So I've got that prototype box with those 12 heads.
Oh my God!
In addition to the one that came with my Jack. So I always keep a happy face Jack on my Jack.
Yeah.
So I feel, even though Jack's scary, it's the kind Jack that really is endearing. You know.
Wow, that's amazing.
I would have a happy face too.
Jack in my collection. Oh, absolutely. Oh my God. Well, this was extraordinary getting to talk with you.
It was extraordinary hanging out with you guys. You guys know your stuff, and I would love to talk to you again. This was a lot of fun.
For sure. When we're back doing our show live, we would love to have you on our live show. I think
that'd be great.
Oh, there's so much fun.
Let's do a panel at Comic-Con or something.
Yeah. Oh my God. Or at Comic-Con. Yeah, for sure.
And I gotta see these prop collections you guys have at your homes.
Oh yeah,
and the Trek stuff.
I'll send some pictures along for sure. Oh, real quick, last thing. One time when we were at Paramount for all these years doing our show, one night we had a big party on the set. Everyone got really, really drunk on the soundstage, and I woke up someone drove me home, and I woke up the next morning in my bed with a big, gigantic metal sign that says "Stage 28, please turn your pagers and beepers off." And it says Paramount on it, and I still have it to this day. It's been I was I don't know how it got off the wall of the soundstage and into my bed. I do not remember taking it.
You might have been planted with it. You might have pulled it off yourself. You have no memory.
I have no memory, and I apologize to Paramount. But that it says pagers and beepers, I thought is like a very weird.
Well, you apologized, but you didn't give it back, did you?
No, absolutely not. That is mine forever.
I don't have a big collection, but I do have a cool thing that Steven gave me for my birthday where
cool.
Apparently it's from the TV series Picard is what my online research has showed me, but it's a cast. It's a mold of Brent Spiner's head.
So what era? Current?
And it looks...
It's from Picard,
They say it's
show.
from the new CBS Picard, which is on CBS All Access, which is a terrific show.
No, right. But what I mean is, I know that although they did a new makeup for him, they also used the disassembled data was actually from the last feature. Was they found the old one and brought it back because it looks more like data than Brent Spiner.
Yeah, I think it's from that because it looks a little. He doesn't look as aged as he does on the show in this mold of his head. Like it's clearly his head, but it's weird because like it's bald because there's no hair on it when you mold somebody's head.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Those are great pieces. That's that kind of stuff. I love that behind the scenes stuff. That's really really interesting.
It's so cool.
Awesome.
All right, Dan.
Guys.
Real quick, where can people find you online? Do you have any social media?
Yeah, I haven't been that active recently, but I am on Facebook, Dan Lanigan, and then I'm on Instagram, you just look up Dan Lanigan. I've got an official Twitter and an official Instagram account. So
awesome.
Take a look.
Mike Black, where can people find you?
At Mike Black Attack on all social media.
Matt Walker, where can people get you?
Links to everything at funnymatt.com, or if you're upset by me in any way, let me know at mattwalkersucks.com.
Yes. You can always get me at Stephen Glickman, S-T-E-P-H-E-N, Glickman on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, all of the places, across MySpace. Thank you so I'm just kidding. Thank you so much, Friendster. Thanks so much for doing the show, Dan. You're the best. And subscribe,
right,
listen. We'll talk soon. Thanks again.
Bye.
Find Steven on Ask Jeeves.
Stand up in front of a fire wall. Steven Glickman about to rock us all.